The first mistake was calling it a vacation. The second was thinking the lake had no witnesses. The road north of Scranton wound through pine forests and low fog. Frank Morris drove one-handed, the other resting on a worn thermos that still smelled like burnt coffee and regret. His wife, Liza, leaned against the window, pretending to sleep. In the back seat, their 16-year-old son, Evan, tapped his phone. No signal, no music, just the rhythmic click of frustration. They'd been driving for 4 hours toward a rented cabin near Stillwater Lake, a name too calm to be true. For Liza, it was a getaway. For Frank, it was an unfinished sentence. He hadn't told her the truth, that this wasn't just any lake. 10 years ago, he'd investigated a missing boy here, the kind of case that stains a career. A sign flashed by, Stillwater 2 miles. Below it, sun-bleached and curling at the edges, a faded poster fluttered. A child's face, missing. 10 years gone, but the photo still looked alive. Evan noticed. "Hey, wasn't that your old case?" Frank kept his eyes on the road. "Lot of missing kids in this state." "Yeah," the boy muttered, "but not all on your route." He didn't answer. The air felt heavy, like the car had dipped underwater. When they stopped for gas at a roadside shack, an old man came out wiping his hands on an oil rag. He squinted at Frank, at the license plate, then at the lake map pinned beside the pump. "Cabin up near Stillwater?" the man asked. Frank nodded. The old man shook his head. "You'll bring back less than you take." Liza forced a polite smile, but Frank's stomach turned cold. He paid in cash and drove off before the man could say more. By noon, they reached the lake. The air shifted, quiet, almost thick. The usual summer noise of crickets and birds was gone. The water stretched out like black glass, still enough to see the clouds in perfect reflection. The cabin sat a few yards from the shore, simple, wooden, maybe once charming. A small dock jutted into the lake, weathered but sturdy. Frank stepped out, stretching, scanning the tree line automatically. Old habits. The place smelled of pine, rain, and something faintly metallic. Evan ran down to the dock. "It's so calm. Look, Dad, you can see straight down." Frank followed, his shoes creaking on damp boards. He looked into the water and saw himself. Only the reflection blinked first. He told himself it was just fatigue. Inside, Liza unpacked groceries and tried to make it feel like home. Clean towels, candles, some old jazz on the radio. The cabin's decor hadn't been touched since the 90s. Beige curtains like photos, one stuffed trout above the fireplace. Frank found a drawer full of old fishing licenses. The most recent was dated June 12, 2015. The name was familiar. He checked again. Kyle Denton, the missing boy's father. He folded the paper, slipped it into his jacket. Later, while Liza cooked and Evan set up his fishing gear, Frank stepped outside with his thermos. The air had cooled, the lake still perfectly motionless. He crouched at the edge of the dock, stared at the faint ripples from the wind. Something metallic glinted in the shallows. He reached down, brushed away mud and moss, a rusted license plate. Pennsylvania plate, numbers barely visible. He froze. He'd seen those numbers before, on the file photo, the missing boy's car. Behind him, Evan's voice broke the silence. "Dad, why are there tire tracks going into the water?" Frank looked up. He didn't answer. But in that instant, he knew this wasn't a vacation. It was the lake calling him back to finish what he'd buried. Frank spent the next morning pretending not to investigate. He drank coffee, fixed a loose step on the porch, asked Evan about bait sizes, all while replaying the scene from last night in his head. The license plate was real. The tracks were real. He wasn't dreaming. Liza noticed his silence. "You're doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "Turning a weekend into a crime scene." He forced a smile. Old habits die hard. By noon, a pickup truck rattled down the dirt road, stopping beside their cabin. The driver stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, sun-baked skin, maybe late 40s. He wore a weathered cap and a faded jacket with a patch that read Ray McCall. "Morning," the man said, voice low, gravelly. "Didn't know anyone rented this place anymore." "Frank Morris," he replied, offering a hand. "My family and I are here for the weekend." The man's grip was firm, his gaze calculating. "Name's Ray, live down the East Shore. Keep an eye on things since the Dentons left." The name hit Frank like a nail to the ribs. "The Dentons?" he asked carefully. Ray nodded. "Good folks, left in a hurry though. Shame about the boy." Lisa appeared behind Frank, smiling politely. "You must be our neighbor. Maybe you can tell us where to get fresh bait." Ray's eyes flicked between them. "Stores long closed. Folks mostly bring their own now." He paused, then added, "Be careful out there, lake's deep, and it doesn't forget." That night, the house seemed to breathe differently. The walls popped and settled as if the place remembered too much. Lisa and Evan went to bed early, but Frank stayed up, sitting by the window, staring at the dock. At 11:42, he saw a light move near the shore. Not moonlight, a lantern. He stepped outside quietly, the wood cold under his feet. Down at the dock, Ray knelt beside the water, pulling something from it, a line heavy, dripping with mud. Frank called out softly, "Late night fishing." Ray didn't turn. Some things bite better after dark. When he finally stood, Frank saw the object at his feet, a small, rusted toolbox. Ray kicked it closed with one motion. "Old junk," he said. "Currents drag up all sorts of memories here." Frank's hand brushed the dock rail, rough wood, splintered and damp. He noticed faint grooves in the grain, circular, like something had been tied there once. A rope, thick, weathered. Ray's lantern flickered across Frank's face. "You were a cop, weren't you?" Frank tensed. "Used to be." "Still are," Ray said, not as a question. "Some men don't retire. They just run out of things to solve." When Frank went back inside, Lisa was standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're following him, aren't you? He knows something." "He's a neighbor, Frank. Not a suspect." "Not yet," she exhaled sharply. "I knew coming here was a mistake." Frank turned away. "No, leaving 10 years ago was." The storm rolled in near midnight. Rain hit the roof hard, thunder echoing across the lake. Frank couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the toolbox, about the way Ray avoided his eyes. At some point he got up, grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside again. The rain had eased, but the air was thick. He moved down the dock, scanning the water. Nothing. Then a dull metallic reflection under the surface where Ray had been earlier. Frank knelt and reached down. His fingers brushed cold iron. He tugged, it moved slightly, but not enough to lift. He clicked the flashlight on full beam. The light cut through the dark water and illuminated what looked like a car bumper, half buried in silt. Thunder rolled again. He dropped the light. When he grabbed it back, the reflection was gone, replaced by his own face, distorted by ripples. He whispered to himself, "Jesus, what did you leave down there, Ray?" From behind, a voice answered, quiet and close. "What makes you think it was me?" He spun around. "No one, just rain. Only his own footprints on the dock." Back inside, he checked his phone. The screen glowed 2:03 a.m. and a new voicemail notification. No caller ID. He played it. A child's voice whispered through static, "Dad, come get me." Frank's hand froze. His thumb trembled on the phone. The timestamp on the message read, June 17, 2012. The night the boy disappeared. Morning arrived without sunlight. Just a pale gray smear over the lake and the kind of silence that made clocks seem loud. Frank sat on the edge of the bed, holding his phone like evidence. The voicemail was still there, the same 3 words, the same static. "Dad, come get me." He'd replayed it 6 times before Lisa stirred beside him. "You didn't sleep again," she murmured. "Couldn't," he said. She opened one eye. "Frank, you have to stop chasing ghosts. Whatever happened here, it's over. He nodded, but he was lying to both of them. Outside, Evan was already at the dock, tossing a fishing line. The fog hung low, thick enough to erase the far shore. Frank walked down slowly, boots crunching the damp boards. "Mom says breakfast's ready," Evan said, not looking up. "You okay?" Frank forced a chuckle. "Just tired." "Yeah, me too, couldn't sleep. Kept hearing something like a bell." "Out on the water." Frank froze. "A bell?" Evan nodded. "Soft, like a bike bell or something, every few minutes, then nothing." The word bell hit Frank harder than it should have. In the old case file, he remembered a detail. The missing boy, Kyle Denton, always rode a red bicycle with a silver bell. The one no one ever found. He scanned the fog. "You see anything?" "No, just water." Frank walked to the end of the dock, crouched down, and dipped his flashlight beneath the surface. For a second, he thought he saw something glinting below, small, round, metallic. Then the fog shifted, and it vanished. By noon, he drove into the nearest town, a small place called Winfield. The sheriff's office looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the 80s. Behind the counter sat Sheriff Weller, a man built like an oak stump with eyes that didn't blink enough. "Morris," he said when Frank showed his ID. "I remember you. You handled the Denton case, didn't you? Back when we still had paper files." "Yeah," Frank said. "You ever close it?" "Closed itself. No evidence, no leads, no body. There's a car in the lake." Weller leaned back, unimpressed. "There's a lot of cars in that lake. This one matches the Denton's license plate." "Matches, or you want it to match?" Frank's jaw tightened. "You'll see it for yourself. East Dock, 30 yards out." The sheriff sighed. "We don't have the resources for ghost hunts, Frank." "Then lend me a dive light and stay out of my way." He left before Weller could argue. Back at the cabin, he retrieved his old police-issued sonar scanner from the trunk, a leftover piece of his past life, the one he swore he'd left behind. He set up a small rubber raft, attached the scanner, and paddled out where he'd seen the reflection last night. The screen flickered to life, gray lines, blips of silt and rock, and then something sharp, rectangular. A metallic outline, trunk, doors, frame. He exhaled. "Got you." He dropped a marker buoy and paddled back. When he reached shore, Ray was standing there waiting, arms crossed. "Early for a swim," Ray said. "Just checking the depth." Ray smiled faintly. "Depth's not your problem, Frank. It's what you'll drag up." Frank stepped past him, refusing to engage, but Ray followed. "You think you're the first to look down there. The Dentons searched this place for weeks. Brought dogs, divers, TV crews. Lake doesn't give up what it takes. Maybe it just needed someone who knew what to ask." Ray's tone sharpened. "Or someone who feels guilty enough to keep asking." Frank turned, eyes cold. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ray shrugged. "You tell me. You were lead on that case, weren't you? Boy vanishes, case goes cold, you quit the force 2 months later. Sounds like unfinished business to me." Before Frank could respond, Evan's voice echoed from the cabin. "Dad, you need to see this." Frank ran up the hill. Evan stood by the front steps, holding something wrapped in an old cloth. His hands were shaking. "I found this in the mud near the dock," he said. Frank unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a child's baseball cap, soaked, torn, but the logo still visible. Winfield Little League. Inside the brim, faint but legible, were 2 initials written in black marker. Katie Lisa came outside, her face going pale. "Frank, tell me that's not." "It's him," he said quietly. "It's Kyle Denton." They stood in silence for a long time. The wind picked up, rippling the lake. That night, Frank sat alone by the fire. The hat lay on the table beside him, still damp. He played the voicemail again. "Dad, come get me." The timestamp flickered, but now it didn't say 2012. It said today, 7:14 p.m. Outside, the bell sound returned, soft, distant, coming from the fog. and Frank realized he was no longer sure what was echo, what was memory, and what was someone trying to send him a message. The morning fog thinned, but not enough to feel real daylight. The lake looked flat, colorless, like something pretending to be calm. Frank sat on the porch steps, turning the boy's cap in his hands, the faded initials Katie still visible under dried mud. He hadn't slept. The voicemail replayed in his mind every few minutes, the same words, "Dad, come get me." He'd stopped pretending it was just a glitch. The crunch of tires on gravel pulled him out of the thought. Ray's truck came up the hill slow, the same old pickup from the night before. He climbed out, coffee in one hand, a fishing rod in the other. The man looked too comfortable, too awake for this early hour. "You're up early," Frank said. Ray shrugged. "Habit, mornings keep a man honest." "Or keep him from sleeping," Frank said. Ray smiled faintly. "Yeah, that too." They both stared at the lake for a while. The silence between them had a pulse. "Sheriff said you're digging up old stories," Ray said finally. "Denton boy, right? You handled that case." "Yeah, never closed it. Maybe it wasn't supposed to close." Frank turned to face him. "You were here when it happened." "Everyone was here, Frank. Whole county helped drag that lake. We found logs, tires, half a dock, and a dozen rumors, never a boy." "You worked the freight yard back then, corner light." Ray's jaw tightened. "You've been busy, just curious. The Denton's car was last seen near your loading bay. That doesn't mean I saw them, but you could have." For a moment, Ray didn't answer. He just stared at the fog, the water, the line where both met. "You're chasing guilt," he said quietly. "That boy was gone long before you showed up. You want to find something down there because you need to fix yourself." Frank stepped closer. "And what do you need, Ray? To be left alone?" Ray turned to leave, but Frank said, "The voicemail timestamp changed. You know how that happens." Ray stopped dead, didn't look back. "The lake keeps what's unfinished." Then he walked off, leaving nothing but tire tracks in the gravel. By noon, Frank had made up his mind. He loaded his old sonar scanner and took the raft out to the spot where he'd marked the hit last night. The screen flickered gray and green sediment silt, the quiet shape of the lake's bottom. Then something rectangular appeared. Solid edges, smooth curves, unmistakably man-made. He leaned closer. Doors, roofline, a car. His heart kicked once hard. He marked the spot, paddled back, and called the sheriff. Straight to voicemail. No surprise. He wasn't done. Using a rope dredge from the shed, he lowered the line again and pulled up what looked like lake junk, branches, cans, rocks. On the third pull, something heavy hit the surface with a metallic scrape. A bicycle, rusted red frame, bent wheel, a silver bell still clinging to the handlebar. It jingled once when he set it down. He knelt, staring. The sticker on the frame, though half-worn, still read, "McCall's Repair, Winfield. Ray's shop." The air went cold. Frank drove there without thinking. The garage door stood open. Inside smelled like oil and dust and secrets that hadn't moved in years. A photo frame lay face down on the bench. He turned it over, a younger Ray, smiling beside a boy maybe 8 or 9. The boy's grin hit like a ghost. "Kyle Denton," on the back written in steady pen, "for when they ask who I was." And faintly beneath, barely visible pencil scratches, "Check the well." "Didn't your mother teach you to knock?" Ray's voice came from the doorway, low and calm. "You knew him," Frank said. "He came by to fix his bike. His dad didn't have time. And then he disappeared." Ray didn't deny it. "People vanish, Frank. Lakes swallow them. Towns forget." "Not all towns forget," Frank said. "Just the ones with help." Ray's expression hardened. "You think I hurt him? I think you know who did." Ray's eyes flicked to the lake beyond the trees. "You ever wonder why the Dentons left that cabin empty? Why the father skipped town before the search ended? What are you implying?" "I'm saying you've been reading the wrong name on those files." A car door slammed outside. Sheriff Weller's cruiser. Ray gave a quiet laugh. Looks like someone already called the law. Who? You'll find out. Frank turned toward the door. When he looked back, Ray was gone. Only the photograph remained, glinting under the work light. He pocketed it, stepped outside, and saw the old wooden well cover behind the cabin, half buried in weeds. The boards were damp, freshly disturbed. The air went still. Even the water on the lake seemed to pause. Frank took one step toward the well, and the bell sound came again, soft, distant from somewhere beneath the ground. The sound shouldn't have been possible, a bell ringing from under soil. But it was there, faint, metallic, hollow, like something trapped was asking to be found. Frank knelt beside the old wooden cover. The boards were damp and soft, nails bent by weather and time. He brushed away the moss and found rope fibers wedged into the cracks, fresh. Someone had opened this recently and not long before the rain. He looked around. The cabin sat quiet. Ray's truck was gone. The sheriff's cruiser still parked by the road, empty. He pried the cover up with a crowbar from the shed. The wood groaned, split, and the smell hit him, wet earth, iron, and something faintly chemical. He aimed his flashlight down. The beam cut through dust and moisture and found stone walls, slick with algae. About 10 feet down, the light caught metal, a chain, half buried in mud. And there, caught in the chain's loop, hung something small and round. He leaned closer. A bike bell, the same tone, the same one from the lake. Frank's chest tightened. He dropped the flashlight, looped the rope around the nearest beam, and climbed down. The air grew colder, the smell sharper. At the bottom, his boots sank into silt. He pulled at the chain. It gave, slow and reluctant, like it had been waiting. Beneath the mud, the outline of a box. He cleared the muck away. Not a crate, a tool chest. Heavy, rusted, padlocked. He recognized the make. A corner light-tissued field box. The same brand the mill used for on-site storage. He hauled it up, every muscle in his arms screaming. By the time he reached the top, his breath came in fogged bursts. He cracked the lock with a hammer and the lid creaked open. Inside lay stacks of old papers, soaked but legible. Parcel documents, signatures, shipment forms, all with one recurring name at the bottom. Elliot Weller, the sheriff. Every sheet stamped Community Relief Program, a fake fund Crane style years before. Frank flipped through, fingers trembling. Transfers, deeds, property seizures, each listed missing individuals as defaulted owners. And at the very bottom, in a plastic sleeve, a single photograph. The Dentons, smiling in front of the cabin, with Sheriff Weller standing beside them, hand on Kyle's shoulder. A sound came from behind him, gravel shifting. Boots. Step away from that box, Frank. Frank turned slowly. Sheriff Weller stood 10 feet away, hand on his holster, face unreadable. "I called you this morning," Frank said. "You didn't answer. I figured I'd see what you'd dig up first." "Looks like you already knew," Weller sighed, thumb brushing the gun latch. "You always did have timing issues. You were supposed to stop when they took you off the Denton case." "They took me off because the evidence vanished." "No," Weller said, "because I made it vanish." For a second, neither spoke. The lake wind rustled through the reeds, low and steady. "You buried a kid," Frank said quietly. "I buried a mistake," Weller said. "His father worked the books, got caught moving money through the mill's fund. When it all fell apart, he tried to skip town. The boy ran. He saw too much. So you covered it with paperwork. Someone had to keep the town standing," Weller said. "You think the mill stays open on prayers. That fund kept food in every store from here to the county line." Frank's jaw clenched. "You're not a savior, you're a ledger with a badge." Weller smiled without warmth. "You sound like Maya Ruiz before she drowned herself." Frank froze. "You mean before you drowned her?" Weller's eyes flicked toward the well. "You're not walking out of here, Frank." "Maybe," Frank said, voice low, "but you already did." A click echoed, not Weller's gun. Frank's phone propped on the well edge, red light blinking. Live recording. The line connected. Nora Hale's voice came through the speaker. "Sheriff, you might want to keep your hands where we can see them." From the tree line, lights flared, 3 county units, silent approach. Weller's face collapsed from authority to panic. He turned just as Nora stepped from the shadows, weapon drawn. "It's over," she said. Weller's gun hand twitched once, then lowered. "You don't understand." "No," Nora said. "We finally do." They cuffed him on the spot under the pale wash of dawn. As they led him away, Frank looked down at the open box, the papers, the names, the faces that never made it to their graves. He sat there until the sun broke the fog. The bell in his hand caught the light and shimmered faintly, almost kind. For the first time in 10 years, the lake looked still for the right reasons. By evening, the county building was a hornet's nest of uniforms and questions. Sheriff Weller sat in the back of a cruiser, head low, sweat cutting lines through the dirt on his face. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The papers in that rusted box were already shouting louder than any confession. Frank stood by the evidence table, still soaked from the well. His hands smelled like iron and rot. Nora Hale paced behind him, flipping through pages sealed in plastic. 37 names, she said quietly. People who vanished in the last 12 years. And look at the signatures. All certified by Weller's office. 37 deaths for a community fund, Frank said. That's not a ledger. That's a graveyard written in ink. The state inspector leaned over the documents. Weller wasn't alone. These records reference Approval Authority M. Crane. "Who's that?" Frank exhaled. "Head of Corner Light Freight, Marius Crane. The man the mill answers to." He'd seen the name before once in the fine print of a shipping manifest, same crooked handwriting, same strange 7-hook flourish that kept haunting him through cases long closed. It connected Stillwater, the Dentons, and now Weller himself. "Crane built the fund to make the mill look charitable," Nora said, piecing it together aloud. "Weller signed the land transfers under missing person status. They'd fake a disappearance, declare the property abandoned, move the land to the fund, and flip it through Corner Light's shell companies." "And the families?" Frank asked. "They disappeared," Nora said. "Or they were made to." Frank rubbed his temples. "And Kyle Denton was the one who found out." Nora nodded. "His father probably told him something. Weller panicked, buried the boy, and wrote him off as runaway, presumed dead. Then he pulled your badge before you got too close." Frank stared at the map pinned to the wall, red circles marking the vanished. Most were clustered along the rail spur leading to the mill. The same line Corner Light used for night runs. He picked up a pen, drew a slow connection between the dots, and the shape appeared not random but deliberate. "See this," he said. "The parcels form a corridor. They were consolidating land." "For what?" "For expansion," Frank said. "Crane's been using a charity fund to build himself a private industrial district under government exemption. Tax-free, uninspected." The inspector closed the folder. "This goes to the state, maybe federal. You've done enough, Morris." But Frank wasn't listening. His eyes had caught something on one of the older documents, a name printed under the column Initial Investigator. His own, Detective Frank Morris. He felt the floor tilt. "Why the hell is my name here?" Nora leaned over. "What's the date?" "March 3rd, 10 years ago, the night Kyle disappeared." Nora frowned. "You weren't even assigned yet." "I wasn't, but someone used my credentials." The inspector checked another file. Same ID number appears on 2 more reports, search authorized by Detective Morris. "That means your name was the warrant signature for the initial lake drag." Frank's throat went dry. "Weller used me to make it look clean." "Or," Nora said slowly, "someone above him did." Frank looked at the chain of custody forms, all leading back to Corner Light Freight, all verified by M. Crane. His badge, his case, his failure, all written into someone else's cover story. He turned to Nora. "We've been chasing a sheriff. The sheriff was chasing a paycheck. The real puppeteers still sitting in an office calling it philanthropy. Nora's phone buzzed, unknown number, distorted voice. "Detective Morris," it said, "you've done good work, time to stop digging. The mountain's thin and you're standing on the weak side." Then silence. Nora looked at him. Trace, blocked through the mill's satellite net. Frank stared through the window. Out there down the road, the mill lights blinked like stars pretending to mean something. He spoke quietly. "They used my name to bury a child and they think I'll stop digging." He grabbed his coat. "We're not done." Nora caught his arm. "Frank, this is bigger than county lines. They'll erase you if you go in alone." "They already did," he said, 10 years ago. He stepped into the cold night. The wind from the ridge carried the smell of creosote again. Same as the night he found the first receipt, the same as the night Kyle vanished. But this time, the mountain didn't feel quiet. It felt awake. The mill crouched under the ridge like a sleeping animal. One stack bled orange into the night. Frank parked on the service road. Nora rolled in dark and quiet. "Warrants are hours out," she said. "I need proof, not hours," Frank answered. A main gate hung half open. They slipped through, moved past a row of idle freight cars to a floodlit dock where a corner light trailer idled with its bay door cracked. Inside, pallets of blue drums stamped cleaning agents, community use. The labels lied. Above the floor, a glass office glowed. A man sat with sleeves rolled, posture calm, eyes certain. Marius Crane. They climbed the metal stairs. Frank pushed in. Crane didn't flinch. "Detective Morris," he said, as if greeting a donor. "You finally made it home." "You used my name," Frank said. "I borrowed it," Crane replied. "Incorruptible reputations are valuable. Perfect blind. You buried 37 people. I repurposed land," Crane said evenly. "Liabilities became assets. The fund kept this town from going dark." Nora stepped left, hand near her holster. "You killed a child." "Systems digest what they can and burn the rest," Crane said. "Ask who signs your paychecks." Frank dropped copies from the well deeds, transfers, Weller's signatures. "You own still water through the trust." "Owned," Crane smiled. "Sold last month to the State Redevelopment Board. They think it's farmland, it's graves. You'll never print it fast enough." "We already did," Frank said. Outside, low engines rolled in, unmarked state cars coasting without lights. Crane rose unhurried. "You can't indict an idea. Sheriff's ledgers, community relief. I only wrote cleaner." Fresh papers on the blotter froze Frank's lungs. "Franklin Morris, assigned custodian, property transfer number 44A. What is this?" "A replacement," Crane said. "Every machine needs an operator. You're not destroying the loop. You're inheriting it." The signature looked like Frank's, same angle, same hurried tail. He hadn't signed anything. "Forgery," Nora said, but the certainty thinned. "Someone had to authorize your access," Crane went on. "Your editor passed me your credentials long before he grew a conscience. Corruption doesn't end with Weller." Tires hissed outside. Voices boomed on the dock. "Hands where we can see them." Crane didn't move. "Your ledgers are copies. Originals are gone, you're chasing smoke." He looked past Nora to Frank. "The lake doesn't forget, it waits for a new name." He reached into his jacket. "Hands up," Nora snapped. No gun, just a lighter. Solvent stung the air. Frank lunged. Crane flicked the wheel. Flame. Then the room erupted. The blast punched the glass wall outward. Frank and Nora hit the floor as heat and shards tore past. Below, fire raced the catwalks, drank from drums, licked rafters. Sirens clawed the valley. Agents swarmed, dragging foam lines through a roar that tried to erase the night. They crawled out a service door, coughing, cut, alive. By dawn, corner light was a black ribcage steaming in cold light. Investigators fished a heat-warped lockbox from the wreck. Inside, one document had survived. A custodianship order transferring the Still Water Trust to Franklin Morris pending adjudication. Stamped clean, signature close enough to pass a bank. They framed you into the loop, Nora said. Make the cleanup yours and the blame if it spills. Can the state unwind it? Frank asked. We can freeze it, a lead agent said. Prove the forgery, burn the trust, claw back land. Months. They'll try to hang the bridge at your feet. Start now, Frank said. Weller's taped admission met the well box, the parcel grid, the temp logs, threads that held after fire ate the rest. Crane's body wasn't recovered. The paperwork chose presumed dead and left a margin for men like him. Frank stood on the ridge while color pushed into the trees. He felt the story settling like silt. A sheriff who called theft relief, a mill that called graves parcels, a fund that called silence charity, and his name offered as the next label. Nora joined him, coat singed, eyes clear. You didn't inherit it, she said. You exposed it. They'll still aim it at me. Then we hang it in the light first. Back at the lake, water mirrored a dull sky. The buoy he'd set over the car bobbed once and stilled. A dive team would raise it today. Truth would surface in pieces, frame, bell, rust. Enough. Frank took the boy's cap from his pocket, KD faint in the brim, and set it on the dock post, brim to shore. For when they ask who he was, he said. Later, the state froze the trust and carved the corridor back into parcels with names instead of numbers. The paper ran verbs that didn't flinch. Families came to the ridge with flowers and silence. The town learned a word and used it correctly. Fraud. Frank signed 3 affidavits, 2 chain of custody forms, and 1 withdrawal from a lease he no longer wanted. He kept the only title that mattered, father. On the way out of Winfield, he pulled to the shoulder where the plows nap in winter. The mountain looked smaller. The lake didn't. His reflection in the glass was older, cut, awake, and for a heartbeat, a second outline backed away. The lake never forgets, he said, but it does return what it can. He put the car in gear. The road took him past the sign, past the mill's scar, past a town that chose to tell the truth out loud. Behind him, still water kept its stillness honestly, for once.